Hey, true believers, Chris Matt coming at you with Inferno number 3. And I gotta say, finally, after 2 issues of talking, we actually start to get some interesting points. And right off the bat, I will say that it shouldn't take 3 issues to get into finally kind of get into the meat and potatoes of what this event is supposed to be about, especially since, from what I understand, issue 4 is the last one, which we will be going over soon. I just kind of find that as a slap in the face, where here, by 2 issues, going to do a lot of build-up, which I understand, but I kind of wish Hickman would have went back and saw how, Powers of 10 and House of X were interesting and kept you involved, as where, you're trying to cram all these ideas into a 4-issue miniseries or whatever. And right off the bat, you kind of get a spoiler. So if you guys have not read this, pause this review, go get the series, and come back. Right here, it says, I know something far more valuable. A different history of the world. The Omega Sentinel. No, the Omega Sentinel is the lady that is kind of like the second in command there on the Orcish station that the X-Men have been trying to infiltrate since the beginning of this event and have been failing miserably at to try to not bring Nimrod online. What was it, X-Men number 20, where Mystique tried, she failed, which kind of caused Destiny to not get her resurrection protocol. So we'll get into that here in a minute. Again, we're jumping ideas, and I think what Inferno is becoming, instead of seeing like an interesting event or like a war, kind of like the original Inferno was, this series is nothing more than just build up for this next, what is it, Destiny of X or whatever. And just when you were hoping that Inferno was going to be the death of Krakoa, they already announced Destiny of X, and you're kind of realizing, well, this is just a big slap in the face. But we start in the past. Professor Xavier is dropping Douglas Ramsey and Warlock off in Krakoa to start building the language and seeing if it's going to be habitable for mutants. And so he says it's going to take a year. And he says, it sounds like you have a lot of work to do, son, after kind of showing what he wants to build on this island. And here, Doug says, the professor has plans. Tell me, Warlock, do we trust him? No, self, friend. Experience says that we do not. Now, in terms of art style, I do not like this Warlock. If you go back and look at the New Mutants reviews that we've done from the Bill Sienkiewicz era, where he always had this otherworldly, very surrealism style, and especially the dialogue boxes, here it looks very generic and flat and boring. So I just feel like if you're given the chance to do Warlock or Douglock as it was there for a while, that you'd want to go a little crazy with it and have fun. But here, this just look like they're playing it safe. Do not like it. But listen to what Warlock is saying to Doug. I don't trust Xavier. Experience says that we do not. And then Doug says, yeah, the heart says yes, but my heart says no. Regardless, first things first, time to make peace with the island. And we get a few pages of them kind of going through, testing the food, seeing how the island, because if you remember from, what was it, Giant Size X-Men number 1, when the original 5 X-Men were captured, which was kind of the starting point of Claremont bringing in the new team to rescue the old team, Krakoa uses mutants to feed off of, and that's how it thrives, and that's why it was perceived as an enemy. So that, with Douglas creating this dialogue, they're able to find out what type of nutrient needs it needs, etc., so forth, and we'll get more into that here in a minute. What bothers me, and this kind of goes back to, I think, X-Force. Doug and Beast are talking about the flowers. He's like, we did exactly as you said. You did exactly what I said? Yes. You used the cadavers I supplied? Yes. All of them. Each one deceased from complications of, yes. Even the ones that were, yes, your instructions were followed to the letter, Dr. McCoy. Trust me, I remember. It was gross. Super gross. Now, if you remember, it was saying, I think it was X-Force. If I'm wrong, let me know. But they're saying in order for the island to really be appeased, it was once a year, every 6 months, a sacrifice had to be made. So with Hank sitting here saying complications of what is Hank McCoy doing behind the scenes, as we've seen all the ways that he is not the Henry McCoy we know from the pages of X-Force, doing all these little machinations behind the scenes. And if you listen to the way that he talks, he goes, yes, run along. There's work to be done. And so many fascinating possibilities in front of us. So many possibilities. He begins to start sounding like the Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse. And if you remember, after the end of Omega and Prime leading everyone back into the main continuity of Earth 616, Dark Beast, Sugar Man, and I think Holocaust escaped to this timeline. And after the events of M-Day, where Wanda wiped out half of the mutant population, Beast is trying in vain to reignite the X gene. And he actually turns to his dark self, and they have, warring battles on morality. This Beast has zero shits about morality in terms of how he acts. And that's why I don't like how the X-Men that we know that have become friends with us through the years are starting to act like these evil doppelgangers. And that's been a big bitch since the beginning of the Dawn of X books. Now, real quick, one thing I do also want to point out in terms of, dialogue and whatnot. This doesn't feel like Douglas Ramsey, because again, Doug was very loyal to the New Mutants, very loyal to the Professor, and he didn't feel like part of the team at the beginning just because his power was a language, but everyone always embraced him and made him feel like he was part of the family. And here he goes, hey, Professor, what happens if the island tries to eat me? Oh, don't worry, Douglas. My boy, everything will be just fine. Just like the time you died while I was in space having sex with a bird lady. This kind of goes back to, I think it was the Extinction Agenda, where Doug was shot and killed on Genosha. Yeah, I had to stop thinking about the name. But I don't see Doug being that bitter like that. That just... To me, this feels like a spit in the face of what Claremont established during that time period, and it just really chaps my ass. Anyway, again, another thing that kind of starts to not feel like Doug is after he's kind of talked about the different, like the habitat plants. I apologize if you hear that squeaking. My dog is having a dream. Anyway, he talks about the habitat plants, the, the dimension, or the portal plants or whatever. But then he goes, what they won't know is what we know, which is now that you don't need to feed off of him. Warlock has spread throughout this entire island, acting as almost something like a nervous system. So while it's true that you'll be blind to these secret places, that blindness doesn't extend to Warlock, enabling us to know what they know, and their secrets become our secrets. And we know everything they are hiding. I don't like what they're doing to Doug here. We kind of starts to become, he was the architect of Krakoa, but now it's kind of like, ooh, I can have all these little secrets. And it just kind of reminds me of, in a king's court where his confidants always keep what the king and the queen, etc., so forth, do so that they can have ammunition in the future. So it makes me wonder what they're going to do here, but I don't know if I'm going to give a crap long enough to want to continue reading. But let me show you an example. If you remember from last issue, where Moira is in her little secret chamber below Krakoa, and she's having her big tizzy fit, which is the complete antithesis of Moira saying how Destiny needs to die. She goes, I will not accept her breathing Krakoan air. I want her gone forever. And then we come into the bowels of Krakoa. And I do like in the artwork how they make this nervous system look like Warlock, how they were explaining that Warlock has dug his nervous system in, and that's kind of what his species does, how it intermixes with whatever organisms it encounters, which I believe they were originally called the phalanx. But as you can see here, Doug's sitting here listening, and he goes, damn it. And that's all you get with Doug. I wish they would have, this would have been interesting in and of itself, but there's so many ideas. After all that, then we get into the credits, which is Jonathan Hickman writing, R.B. Silva, Stefano Caselli, and Valerio Schetti doing the pencils. Adriana De Bento doing the inks. David Carell doing the letters. VC's Joe Sabino doing the lettering. Here's everyone else working on the book. X-Men were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and of course, made epic by Chris Claremont. So then we enter the Cuckoos, where Moira and Destiny try to make an alliance with Emma. Because at the end of the last issue, the essentially, you know, Raven, Mystique, turns her back on Xavier and Magneto. And so they try to seek out, what's her name? Emma Frost. Reveal to her what their plans are. Emma feels betrayed and turns her back on Xavier. So Destiny and Raven try to make an alliance with Emma, but it's an uneasy one, and I don't want to go too much into this because there's a lot of spoilers here, but just know that Destiny goes, you know, how the old Emma used to be. She's pulling strings, just like Charles and Eric would. She's like them, you see. Wind us up and watch us whirl. Now, I think the best part for me is Moira finally being found out, because this is not the Moira McTaggart that we know from the old Claremont days. This is just some evil doppelganger. Now we're going to skip past all the more reading, and that's another thing, is there's so much damn reading, at least with the House of X and Powers of 10. In between the information that Hickman was trying to get out, at least there were some interesting battles. You know, you'd go into the future and you'd see the Rasputin and I don't remember what the clone of Nightcrawler was called. He was that red demon. But, you know, they were trying to fight against the future enhanced Nimrod. And then, you know, you go back to House of X and Powers of 10, and then that was the X-Men trying to invade the Orca Station. So at least in between all this preamble, there was still action and you were engaged. Here, it's, you know, there's the information that they're giving. It's interesting, but it's just a whole, 3 freaking issues of sitting and talking. We're on Krakoa talking. We're on a space station talking. We're under Krakoa talking. Now we're in Emma's chamber talking. Guys, this is not TV. You can't have people sitting around and talking for pages and pages and pages. Comics are a visual medium. People need to be moving, engaging. Because if you stay static, you kind of tend to start noping out. I was really hoping that Inferno, for me, was going to be a battle to the end for Krakoa, with it eventually ending up burning to the ground. That was my hope, my preconceived notion. But anyway, that aside, here's where things kind of get interesting, and again, things come to fruition from Powers of 10. We see the Omega Sentinel talking to Nimrod. And Nimrod has these inklings saying that you actually run Orcus. And she goes, I know something far more valuable. A different history of the world. And see, this interesting dialogue, but looking and talking, standing and talking, standing and talking. It just defeats it. I'm not going to sit here and bore you guys, so let me kind of just put it here. We come to find out that the Omega Sentinel that's on the Orca Station, she's not really a past version of the one that we saw in Powers of 10. She's sort of, again, the antithesis of Moira, where Moira uses timelines to try to manipulate the past. Here, they kind of pull a Days of Future Past, where the incarnation of the future Omega Sentinel is sent back in the past early before she reaches her ascendancy, essentially. And she's telling Nimrod how, you know, the timeline she's from, mutants always win. Because as we remember, they always talk about in House of 10, House of X and Powers of 10, bleh. How there's the mutant-human war, how mutants eventually take over, beat the machines, yada, yada, yada. This is what they're alluding to here. And so the Omega Sentinel's, cognizance is sent back into the past so that they can at least try to get Nimrod up to where he needs to be in the future. Because they go and they allude to the Chris Claremont era Nimrod that was defeated and all the different Nimrods that have gone through time. So she says that she's here. She is able to manipulate one of the scientists to try to bring this Nimrod up and to defeat the mutants here in the past before they reach their ascendancy. So we kind of see these two different future people, Moira and the Omega Sentinel, fighting for the fate of the future. And that's interesting. But damn, can we stop talking and see some action? And then here we kind of get Moira's 10th life talking about how mutants always win. I'm not going to go through all of it. You guys are just going to have to pick up the book because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. My God. And then when we finally get a payoff where Xavier and Magneto are looking for Moira, and we're really hoping to see what's going to happen, the book ends. So overall, I'm disappointed with this series, but I'm glad to see that it's actually starting to go somewhere. If you guys have enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that is where you can upload content. You guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with you all and hearing your feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.